What is going on, comic fam? It's your boy, the bearded comic bro, and I am joined by comic creator Mark Russell. Welcome back to the show,
Oh, hi. Thanks for having me.
man. I'm just grateful that you still hop on. I pester you like once a year. I'm like, hey, can you come on? You're like,
Yeah.
yeah, I got you.
Oh, anytime.
So, if you are not familiar with Mark's work, you don't watch my channel. So, welcome to my channel, and because I hype you up all the time. I love what you do. You create, but Second Coming, Flintstones, Superman, Space Age. Currently right now you've got Billionaire Island, Cult of the Dogs. You've got Traveling to Mars. Like holy buckets, you got a lot.
I try to keep busy.
Yeah, you do. It seems like you do a good job. Now,
Thanks.
last time I had you on the show was in January, and you had just wrapped up Not All Robots, and I had Not All Robots as one of my favorite books of 2021. I actually had it as my favorite book of 2021. And apparently some other people liked it too. Eisner's, Ringo, whatever. But I think mine was more prestigious. But how's that been? Now that something you've done, is getting the recognition and the love and in those circles.
Well, it's great. I feel a little mystified by it myself because I feel like I put the same attention and love into everything I write. And sometimes, it connects with the public consciousness and sometimes it doesn't. And you just kind of have to understand that once it leaves your hand, it kind of takes on a life of its own. But I'm extremely gratified and grateful for when it does actually find its audience and
Yeah.
connect with people.
It's got to be an interesting thing, of like when it comes to like awards and stuff like that, because you're like you said, you're like, I put my best effort, in all of this stuff. And I'm sure you're like, this is some of my best stuff that you put out. And you're like, so it's like, what about this one? Why did this, and
Yeah,
trying to
it's
figure out why
really
it
just
hits.
a question of the audience and the zeitgeist is sort of a moving target,
Yeah.
and it's just about when you happen to be passing each other in the street, when you happen to match up. Those are the things that sort of like get recognition,
Yeah.
which makes you incredibly grateful when it does happen, and it also kind of gives you a sense of perspective when it doesn't happen. It's like, well, this didn't get as much attention as I think maybe it deserved, and not very many people read it, but at the same time, that's just the price you pay
Yeah.
for doing art you believe in, and you have to sort of resign yourself to the fact that not everybody that 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 it's a crapshoot. You're not always going to have a ton of readers lining up to read what you do, but it's okay because the important thing is the work. And when people do discover something like the Flintstones or Not All Robots, a lot of times they will go back and read the other stuff that everybody ignored.
Yeah.
So there's no such thing as wasted writing. At the very least, you've created a work of art and that will endure, at least as long as it's in print,
Yeah.
and you should take some happiness in that.
Well, I mean, that is 100% true, because I first discovered you when I got back into comics like 4 years ago because of Second Coming. I remember seeing the article about it, the story of Superman and Jesus, and I was like, let's go. And then stuff happened. I'm like, oh no. But I read it and I found you, and then like people were instantly like, go back, read Flintstones, read Snagglepuss, go, Wonder Twins, and it just opened up a whole plethora of stuff for me to explore that I just hadn't been familiar with yet.
Well, thanks. Yeah, and that's kind of my philosophy of writing too. It's like you're not just writing one thing
Yeah.
and a vacuum. You're creating an oeuvre. You're creating a body of work. And so don't be frustrated when something's not doesn't sell a million copies or doesn't getting the recognition or is frankly just ignored by everybody because you build an audience slowly over the years, and the people who really like your work and appreciate, whose brains sort of resonate on the same frequency of
Yeah.
yours, will go back and find the other stuff.
I'm curious. I've had people on the show before, and they've talked about how like when they've been Eisner nominated, that like it opened up doors for them. That was it. I feel like you already had a lot of doors opened up, like with publishers and stuff. Like, has it changed like your process of making comics in any capacity, or has it just been like, no, this is cool, I'm still making it the way I make it? Like,
Yeah, more the latter. Like you said, I kind of inexplicably had doors open for me early on,
yeah,
so I didn't really experience this moment of like all of a sudden, people are calling me, or the same people who were always calling me would call me up and say congratulations. But yeah, it's just been kind of more like life is going on, and I am continuing to make work. I think the main thing is it does allow me to like put that on the business card or whatever,
Yeah.
so that I can approach people I don't know, and maybe they'll listen to me for 30 seconds longer than they would have otherwise. And like I said before, it's just always really nice to be noticed by your peers, to get
Yeah.
that gratification, because there's so many times in life where you don't get it. So this is a rejection fueled business. So I mean, even successful writers have a lot of pitches and projects rejected. In fact, Not All Robots was like probably my most rejected pitch I've ever written. It was
Wow.
rejected by pretty much everybody until AWA took a shot on it. So uh, the when you have a success, it goes a long way towards healing all the rejection you had to endure to get there.
Yeah. That's it's crazy to hear that it was one of your most rejected. It's funny too though that you mentioned that like now you can put that on your business card because I I mean I put that I interview you on my business card when I reach out to other creators. I'm like, I've had Mark Russell on, so come
They're
on.
like, oh, who's that?
No, it helps. So trust me. So I name drop you when I ask other creators. I'm just letting you know. So let's talk because we didn't get to talk about this because it was I feel like we knew it was coming, but it hadn't. Superman Space Age is your 2 issues are out. There's third one coming soon here. Wrap it up. I guess really though, before we hop into the story, I gotta ask, why Superman? Because I feel like you have a pull towards Superman. You had the Second Coming, the Superman archetype. You did the Future State run with, with Superman, the Imperious Lex, and now we got Superman here. Is it just like that's how it happens, or has there been kind of a pull for you of like I want to dig into this character?
No, Superman's always been my favorite superhero. And I think it's because he's the purest thought experiment
Mm.
of like, what would you do if you had the power, or what would the world be like if you chose to be your best self? So I think in a lot of ways he's much more powerful. I mean, some people think he's boring because he's good, but to me that's what's fascinating about him. The fact that like he has all the power in the world and could be as corrupt as any of us if he chose to be, but something keeps him thinking about the rest of us,
Mm.
ants though we are. And to me that's fascinating. That's the secret. If we can unlock that, like how you are to people you don't have to be nice to is kind of like all that really matters about you. It's kind
Mm.
of what says what kind of human being you are. And if we could crack that code, if we could figure out what makes Superman not powerful but still a decent guy despite the fact that he's powerful, we will take a step forward as a species.
I mean, it makes so much sense that you say that because you know issue one of this sets it up really well, and I fell in love instantly. But issue two, you talk about some of those exact same things that you mentioned, right? Like he's having the interview with Lois, and she's like, did you just tell me your weakness? Like, is that the best thing? Like, I'll keep that off record. He's like, no, post it because if someone has to go to the lengths to deal with that, like, I probably deserve it. Like, and it's so good to hear like that as you're talking about. That's how it's coming out in your work. I think.
Yeah, and I think the important thing about Superman, one of the things that keeps him sort of grounded and not contemptuous of human beings, is that he realizes that as much as he's here to save the world is here to save him, and that humanity is really what has allowed him to have a life, and so he is cognizant of the fact that we rely on each other, and I think this is the big lesson he learns over Superman Space Age, is that the problem is it's not his to solve, it's him to be part of the solution of. It's for him not to save the world, but to help us save ourselves.
It's like I'm talking to Paul Kent right here, which makes sense because you wrote that.
You
So
sort of are, yeah.
yeah. So where did this story for like because again you've dabbled in the world of Superman, but like for Superman Space Age, where did that idea and start kind of formulate for you?
Well, I originally wanted to do a story about Superman, knowing that he was going to fail. Superman knowing that the world was going to come to an end, regardless of what he did. So the original idea is that this would tie into Crisis on Infinite Earths and be the story of a Superman in one of the universes that doesn't make it.
Yeah.
And then the question becomes, well, why continue being Superman if you know it's all for nothing? And I think that's kind of the question he has to answer as the series goes on.
Mm, yeah. So, I mentioned that's so cool to hear because I mentioned that first part in where he's talking in the interview, and there's another segment in issue 2 where he's talking about the hope, right? Superman's hope, like that's what we always it's top billed as.
He is
Superman.
sort of the avatar of hope.
Yeah, and you have this scene where he's talking with Lois on the street, and she's kind of like, "Why do you do the autographs? Why do you do this?" And as he's talking, like he's carrying up an old lady, flying her up to their, and he gives this kind of idea of, you know, I want to give people hope from the aspect of, that someone cares about them, and that way, then they know someone cares about them, even when someone's not looking, and like when you have this idea and this thought process for Superman, is it something that you like your writing process? I guess I want to get into a little bit here is, do you have these nuggets of like, I want to hit on this area and like I know when I'm going to tell it, or is it kind of just like I'm going to see where it flows in the writing process to say I want to put
More
this part in?
more the second one. A lot of it is, I have the story figured out. I know how I feel about Superman, why that character and their world matters to me. But a lot of these sort of distillations of like how they think or why they are the way they are come to me in the process of writing. Writing for me is sort of a form of meditation where it's just like I keep writing things down, changing them. And for me, writing is largely a process of creative destruction. I'll write more than I need. I'll take out all the parts I don't need. I'll change it to see if I can make it more to the point that I want to get at. And in doing that, it's sort of like these lines or these moments of clarity sort of come to me, where it's like, this is really what this character is all about, or this is really what this moment, the story needs, why this moment needs to be in the story. But a lot of it is just going through the process of writing and putting your feelings on paper until you find the perfect way to put it into words.
Yeah. So was this, as someone who's, it sounds like you've had this desire to always be, tackling the character of Superman. Was this, I know last time we talked, you talked about how you have a folder of ideas that you put stuff in. Was this one of those ideas that, and then like DC came and approached you, or was this like, no, I have this idea for Superman in particular, I'm going to approach them with this story arc?
They approached me about pitching something for Superman, and this was sort of the idea. I mean, they said that they initially wanted something to tie into Crisis on Infinite Earths, and that was kind of the prompt that I took. That like, well, this would be fascinating to tell a story about Superman knowing the universe he's in is going to end, and so that was what I pitched to them, and they seemed to like it. And originally, we were going to do a maxi series where it would be 20 issues from like 1965 to 1985, with each issue being a year, and it was going to be part of the whole 5G thing. But then when the 5G thing blew up, they still wanted to do the idea for the Superman story I had, but we just changed the format to like 3 prestige books
Yeah.
instead of this maxi series.
Is that is that difficult for you in the process, or do you have a style that you like doing it more of the short 5 issue series, or the maxi, or the more short 3 prestige? Is there a format, because does it change for you of writing style, or is it like,
It
no, I
does
just
a
have.
little. And one thing the change did do is it forced me to like sort of cut out some of the storylines and minor characters that I wanted to like have more of in the story, just to like keep it on the page count. But it also made the story, I think, a little tighter, a little more urgent, and it also, I think, was great to be able to write 80 pages without having to come up with chapter ends, without having to come up with like ends for individual issues, because it allows you to really tell a much deeper focused story and follow characters down. You can have 15 pages where Superman doesn't even show up, and it doesn't feel wrong or weird in an 80-page comic, whereas it would seem really strange if it was like a 20-page comic.
I guess I'll have to have Michael on the show and see how that is different as an artist for doing the 80 pages or the shorter. But
Yeah, it was like kind of a marathon for him. I can be kind of cavalier about it because I'm just typing into a laptop, but this series placed a lot of demands on both him and Laura doing 80 pages at a time.
Yeah. How that team? Because you got an all-star team, obviously yourself, Michael, and Laura Allred, and then you got Dave Sharp doing that. Like, how did this come about? Was this your process, or was it kind of collaborating with DC of like who you wanted to get on this book?
Yeah, it was a joint process. Like my editor, Brittany Murphy, like she wanted to me to just come up with like a list of artists I want to work with. Like basically she said, come up with a bucket list. Don't even think about, availability, or don't even try to like game theory yourself into a compromise. Just go for it. Like artists you want to work with. And she said, and I'll do the same. And then we'll compare notes. So we both did it. And Mike was the only artist who was on both of our lists. So, and which, I thought, well, this is like a starting position. She's going to call him up and he's going to say, are you crazy? I'm busy till 2030. And then we'll just move on to the next artist. And so I was like, just gobsmacked that he was available and interested in doing it right off the bat.
Yeah. Is
To me,
there
that was a good omen.
Yeah, no, for sure. Is there something that Michael created that like resonated with you so much that like put him on that list for you?
Well, for me, in the 90s, I mostly read like indie comics and stuff. So Madman was always like one of the ones I really loved. Plus his work with like um, Dan Slott on the Silver Surfer, I just thought was phenomenal. So yeah, those are probably the big ones. But I just love his work in general. I think in a way he's kind of the perfect artist for Superman because his lines are so strong and clear. He just seems to evoke honesty and earnestness when he draws characters. Plus, he's also very cosmic and funky. So I thought he would be like waiting to see him draw Brainiac or these sort of like 2-page spreads with like all the Justice League heroes. To me, it was just like it'll be worth it, even if I totally drop the chili on the floor as a writer. It'll be worth it just for these moments that I've allowed Mike to draw.
Which was so cool to see. Like you mentioned Brainiac and the world that you created here of I didn't realize that you're going to bring in the Justice League and we're seeing Bruce Wayne and Lex Luthor having a kind of a war games kind of spending spree to figure out who gets the job, and we're bringing in Wonder Woman and Hal Jordan and like all these characters. Like, is that always something you're just like, I just want to play in the sandbox with everyone and see how they interact with Superman? And
Well, part of it goes back to what I said. It's like Superman's big realization is that the world is not his to save, that he is here to help the world save itself. And so that means that the story is not going to be about Superman doing everything on his own. He's going to be looking for partners. He's going to be looking for people to work with. And also, I wanted it to be very much about like how the events of our actual history of the world we actually live in would affect the sort of make believe world of superheroes. So all of them, in a way, have their origin story tied into like the Kennedy assassination. Like after the Kennedy assassination, Hal Jordan's a fighter pilot, like on patrol in the Arctic Circle, looking for like a Soviet sneak attack to take advantage of the chaos. Superman's deciding he has to like go save the world right now without knowing what he's doing. Lois Lane gets her big break in like writing, the story about the assassination for the Daily Planet. And Lex Luthor and Bruce Wayne both are like, bidding for a major defense contract when the assassination changes everything. And so in a way, I wanted this to be about not only how these superheroes would affect history, but how history would affect the how regular people choose to become heroes or villains.
yeah, so good. I want to get to some of your other books, but before we hop off this, I gotta say I absolutely love the part where Superman's being interviewed by Lois and she's just grilling him, and he's like, "Yeah, but I just saved the
Yeah,
world from an asteroid."
yeah, he because he's in love with Lois and they're friends. He thinks that when she interviews him as Superman, that she's going to go easy on him, or that she's
Right.
as nice to she'll be as nice to Superman as she is to like Clark Kent. But that's not what a journalist is there for. She's not like a PR person. She's not, there to write a puff piece on Superman. She's there to like figure out what this huge, insanely powerful alien threat is here on Earth to do? And yeah, it sort of like sort of takes him aback a little bit.
Yeah. He's just like, yeah, but I stopped an asteroid. Like, get off my case.
If I was Superman, that would be my answer to everything, every criticism. It's like I just saved the Earth from an asteroid.
Like,
What do
what else do you want?
yeah,
Like,
like you're playing with the house's money now.
come on. So, when you have, we talked about your idea folder. Do you have like a character folder list of kind of like characters that you would love to, create or work in that sandbox or that world? Obviously, we've talked about Superman. You have a love for Superman. Are there other characters that you're like, I would love to find a story that would work for them?
I think other than Superman, who kind of is like my ultimate thought experiment on, ultimate power and how to like not be corrupted by it.
Mhm.
Other than that, I like to go kind of the exact opposite direction and talk about superheroes or villains without much power at all. Like, how do you like? I wrote One Star Squadron with Steve Lieber did the art on to kind of answer that question. Like, well, what happens when you are getting squeezed out of the calling that you love? And these are like superheroes who are no longer in demand and are sort of struggling to make a living in the hero business. And what happens to those people? In a lot of ways, it's very much like what happens to professional athletes when they're no longer, able to play pro sports. It's like what do they do then?
Yeah.
And the answers are usually not that pretty.
Yeah, I was just curious because, like, and you had, I think it was back in like November, you did a Blade one shot, and which I was just like, yes, I want a whole Blade series.
I actually have a pitch in to Marvel for a series that expands on that story. We'll see if anything ever becomes of it. But I would love to write more Blade, specifically the Blade in the Vampire Kingdom as
Yeah,
sort of like the sheriff there.
that's so cool. Big news, at least to me, and I know a lot of your fans, is you're coming back with Second Coming here again for a third time in April. I think it is. We're getting Second Coming Trinity. Is that something you always had like a mindset of like, I want to tell 3 arcs here? Or was this kind of like a, we'll see how the first arc does, wait and see kind of thing?
Well, I always wanted to do more. Given the reception that the announcement with at Vertigo
Yeah.
had, where there was suddenly all this controversy and there were petitions to get DC to drop it, and protests and stuff. I thought, well, I'll be lucky to get 6 issues out. I mean, if they do go through with this, they will probably just print the first 6 issues, then thank me for my service and send me out the door. But when it went to Ahoy, it sort of opened up this whole possibility. Like, no, I could actually expand the story. And I'm thinking now, I probably, if left to my own devices, if given a blank check, I'll probably write like 5 series, 5 or maybe even 6. But yeah, the third one's already written, and it tells part of the story I'd always sort of envisioned telling uh, in this, and it sort of picks up right where the second series left off, where now Sunstar and Sheila have a baby, and it's about what life is like dealing with a superpowered baby, which is something that both Sunstar and Jesus have some experience with.
Yeah.
Them both being superpowered children and knowing how hard it is to live in a world where you are that powerful and that inexperienced.
Yeah, wow, I'm so excited for that because I know like the first arc it kind of explored more of, you know, your interpretation of who Jesus was and Jesus's message. And second arc, I think like you dug even deeper into, the world of Christianity and Christianity's what they've perceived the message of Jesus is and how it's been contorted, in that kind of aspect. So I was kind of curious of where the third arc theme is going more towards.
Yeah, the third one is more about their relationships with each other, and also about like I think the third issue is more about like being parents and being children,
Mhm.
and how that creates challenges for each other in the world.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the whole team is back again, right?
Yep, everybody's back, and we're hoping to keep them. If I do end up doing 5 or 6 series, the dream would be to keep everyone together throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. And is again, I'm assuming this is another 6 issue arc that you have written up for it.
Yep. and first issue comes out in April.
That's
So
so
really, really close here.
I'm excited. When I saw that, I was like, let's go. Yes. Because again, it was my first exposure to you as a writer. So now I'm like, the more we can get
Actually,
in that world, the
well,
better.
thank you. Yeah, I hope you like it. I just did a lettering pass on the first issue, and the art that both Richard and Leonard came up with just it really moved me just seeing it all finished and colored. Because it does in a lot of ways. I think this arc is perhaps more emotional than the others. It's more sort of intimate and emotionally centered than the others, which, like you say, are in a lot of ways more focused on the intellectual dissection of superheroes or the theological dissection of Christianity. This one's just about characters trying to survive.
Hey, so if people get on this, and they can at least maybe get it and like, oh, we'll get to know these characters, then go back and dig into some of
Yeah.
those. So, real quick, I gotta ask. So, you're currently writing a series that has been gut punching me every time it comes out. Traveling to Mars, um, traveling is like, what are you doing to me? Like, it's emotionally wrecking me. And I just read, I think issue 3 just came out last week or the week before, and you ended me on a cliffhanger that I'm just like, oh my gosh, why are you doing this?
Well, good. It's having the intended effect then. I feel like, again, this was something that was a very sort of deeply personal story I want to tell. A lot of it draws upon uh, things. It's not autobiographical by any stretch of the imagination, but things that I grew up with or things that I've felt, and just sort of my private musings on what we're doing here on planet Earth in our finite lifetimes. And so I wanted to really write a series about that, and about somebody who's like kind of wasted their life and is finally given a chance to reflect on it, given a chance to reflect on what it meant to be alive now that he's on a one-way mission to Mars, uh, with no chance of ever coming back. And so I'm extremely grateful I got a chance to write this series, and to write it my way without having to like put in a bunch of like spaceship battles or
Yeah.
superhero characters, just sort of be able to tell a story about a guy, a terminally ill man on his way to Mars.
And I mean, so far that's exactly what it is. It's been this kind of, a look into who he was, and past regrets and stuff and things like that. And is not an action packed, it is a emotionally packed story for sure.
Well, thank you.
So
Yeah, that's what I wanted to write.
yeah, so that was, and gang, if you're not checking it out, it's Ablaze is the one publisher that's doing it, and it's fantastic. So
And it helps if you actually, if you want to read it, it helps if you ask your comic book store to actually put it in your pull box, because it's a smaller publisher,
yeah.
which is great because they're open to letting you just tell the story the way it needs to be told. But it also means like a lot of local comic book stores aren't going to carry the title unless somebody specifically requests that it be put in their pull box.
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely check that out, because again, it's a gut punch emotionally. And um yeah, it's been how many is that, five issues?
No, it's going to be 11.
11. Okay, so wow. We're I'm in for the long haul. Great.
Yeah,
Awesome.
you're not even halfway there.
Oh man, and I feel like I'm just going to continually have to just deal with my emotions here. I want to be respectful of your time. I always try and keep these around 30 so minutes. Before I let you go, a couple things I wanted to ask you. Last time I had you on, we talked about Not All Robots, and you had said this was a world you had full intentions of exploring. And when Eisner's Ring, like, is that still something that you're exploring, or is that stuff you can't talk about? Or
Yeah, I mean, I've got a pitch into AWA, and they would, I think, like to do it, but we're waiting to figure out, if the timing and
okay,
everything can happen. But yeah, I can't guarantee it, but it's extremely possible to whatever that means. That there will be a second Not All Robots.
fantastic. Um, and I'm just curious now from my own. I know you do a handful of conventions and things. Curious to know. It's a two-parter for you as we wrap up here. What are the top 2 or 3 comics that people have you sign? And then what is your favorite comic to sign when someone brings you that comic? You're like, all right, let's go.
Well, the ones I get a lot of people bringing to sign are Second Coming's probably number one, and then Flintstones probably also. The one or the ones that I feel like uh, this is very gratifying. I'm going to take a moment to absorb the fact that someone brought this in for me to sign are the Lone Ranger, which I did for Dynamite, which I don't think anybody read. So I think all the people who did actually buy a copy, I've signed them probably. And then also the some of the crazy one shots that didn't ever lead it, like the You're the Villain Sinestro story, which I'm very proud of, or the Booster Gold Flintstones crossover, uh, or um, the Green Lantern Huckleberry Hound crossover. When people bring those in, it's like they get a gold star from me.
You're like, nice. Well, it just came to my mind because I know I'm East Coast, you're West Coast, so like we haven't gotten across paths yet at a con, but I was like, what book would I have Mark sign? And I don't know. So I'm excited to figure that out someday. Well, before I let you go, is there, I know we talked a lot about stuff coming up, Second Coming Trinity, which gang order that, Traveling to Mars still in the process, hit up previews, hit up Diamond, get that. Is there other stuff that you have coming out that you want to highlight right now, or is it just
Yeah, a couple other things. My Bad, Volume 2 is out right now, which I co-wrote with Bryce Ingman, with art by Peter Krause. That issue 3 just I think dropped Wednesday, and then yeah, I have a new series coming out with AWA called Rumpus Room, which will come out later in 2023.
what? I First and foremost, I, as much of a fan as I am of you two, AWA is one of my favorite publishers too. So like when
They're
you two,
they're, they're one of the publishers that it doesn't matter what they put out. I will take a chance on it because they've got such a good track record. It does, it's like they were one of the few publishers I will buy just because the name of the publisher on the
yeah,
label.
same. Is is it official? Like you said, Rumpus Room. Is there anything you can talk about, or is it just like now we can say the title and that's it?
I'll give you like the elevator pitch. It's about a billionaire who locks people in his rumpus room who've become problematic for him, uh, and he has them crushed one by one and turned into a really awesome skin cream. But he lets them vote on who the next person is going to be that's going to be crushed. So that drops later in the year.
Holy cow! I'm excited. I am excited. Mark, thank you so much just for taking some time to talk about comics with me as always. So
Yeah, no, anytime. Very always a pleasure.
yeah. So gang, with that being said, again, go check out all these titles. Again, there's so many. Like I'm loving My Bad. I have it. I've had Bryce on the show as well, and I completely forgot that's coming out. And I just read the issue yesterday, and it was on a show talking about our favorite comics of January, and I was like, oh, My Bad, because it had the Bewitched cover on it. I was like, that's one of my favorite. And I are planning for this interview. I forgot. So that just tells you how busy Mark.
Yeah,
So go check
trying
out
to
his
stay busy.
So, but with that being said, all the links to Mark stuff is in the description of this video. Go buy these comics, check them out. And with that, though, gang, hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.